All right, so now let's talk about flow versioning. How is flow versioned and what is the purpose of versioning flows, right? So as part of flow versioning, what you normally understand is basically a history or an audit trail of what has happened with the flow in the past time, right? In the past history, what has been changed, what version is currently activated, what is currently deactivated, and all of this stuff, right? How does this help? Every time versioning helps because you are able to track what changes were made on top of the current flow and what was activated with the new version, right? How we have a new version every year, right? Every birthday, I believe we grow a year older, right? So we are basically living this thing called life, and we are able to get better at this version that we are in currently, right? We are learning flows right now, so we are getting better at it. So that's a new version of us. Similarly, you have flow versioning, right? And why is this important? It is important for audit trail. It is important to understand what did I do 6 months back that has that that is different, and what is it that I have done 6 months later which is new, and which is the difference, right? Now when I say versions, right, let's take a look at some versions here. So I'll go to flows, and let me switch to lightning so that you are able to see this on the lightning experience instead of classic. Let's see, right? So when you are on the lightning experience, let's go to setup, let's go to flows. So when you click on the flow name, it takes you to the flow, right? This the place where you see the flow canvas and you are able to build everything. But then alongside every flow, you see this caret icon here. When you click here, you see, okay, this is something that's from Salesforce. Let's pick up something that we created, right? Let's say, for example, this screen flow. All right, let's go to this caret icon and you will be able to notice, okay, I can see the details and the versions. So when you click on that link, you'll be able to see what all versions have been created of the flow. I might have to open this in Classic, but you will get to see this on your screen if you're using Chrome or a Windows browser, right? See, so you'll be able to see what are the total number of versions that have been created. Okay, now what do you want to know? If you notice 11:39 a.m. on 12th January, or is it 12th January? No, this is 3rd December, right? 3rd December, 11:39 a.m. was when the first version was activated, right? And then 11:51 was when it changed and we updated it to second version. And then 12 p.m. on the same day is when we updated it to the third version, right? So what was the API version for it? It was 59 all throughout. Okay, which version is currently active? This particular version is currently active. Which versions can be deleted? Only the inactivated versions can be deleted. See the delete icon available here? That means you cannot delete an active flow. You have to deactivate it and then delete it. Make sense? At a time, how many versions can be activated in a flow? Only one version can be activated in a flow at a given point in time. So you see, only one version is currently active. If I activate this version, this one will be deactivated. This one will be automatically set to inactive. You want to see that? Let's click on activate here. You will see the change. The deactivate button will show on the second version. See this one right here. Can I delete an activated version? No, I cannot. But can I delete an inactivated version? Yes. So if I delete this version and I say OK, see, now only two versions are left. What are the versions? See, it did not update the count to 1 and 2. Why? Because these are the second and the third versions. This means that the first version has been deleted. Okay. So this is the second version and the third version. Let's reactivate our final version, and I will see that this has swapped places and the delete button is available here. Now, why is this important? This is important. Like, for example, I want to see what did I do differently which made me activate the new version, and probably this is why it is causing errors. So if I just duplicate this tab, and now I'll open the second version here and I'll open the new version here. Let's see what's the difference. Okay, so I'm right here. This shows display account information, and you see I've added a decision node here, and that's where I'm saying that, if it is a platinum customer, I am displaying the screen. So the difference between the two screens is a decision node. Normally, when do you create a new version? You create a new version when you need an upgrade, right? When you need to change some logic, some business criteria, some business rule, or you want to incorporate a new action, or you want to do something different from what has been currently implemented or incorporated. That's when you create a new version, right? So for example, I have to create a new version of this flow, and I've let's say built it 6 months back, and now the business has come back and they're asking me, Himanshu, whenever the customer is a platinum customer, I don't just want to display the account information, I also want to send out an email to the administrator, take care of this particular client. So as soon as I create a new alert action here, right, and activate it, I will say save as, and I'll create a new version of the flow. Make sense? Right? This is where you see when you save the flow, every time you save it, you create a new version of it. So a new version is chosen here, and you see these versions showing up here on your screen, the three versions that we saw, right? And at a time, only one version can be activated, not multiple versions can be activated. I hope that's logical enough, right? Now, for example, you want to create a similar flow, right? Something similar to what you have built. How do you clone it? You can simply say create a new flow, and you see it tells you that, give it a new name. Now, this will not become a new version. This will not become a version of the flow. This will be a flow, different flow altogether. Does that make sense? Great. So when you want to create a duplicate or maybe clone an existing flow and create a completely different or entirely new flow altogether, you switch to the new flow option. But if you want to just incrementally add something new to your current flow, you will choose to create a new version. Okay, great. Now, if I were to delete this particular inactive version, I will be able to, but I cannot delete the active version, right? Now, how do I delete a flow in my system? If I have to delete it, I hope you guessed it already, I'll have to say deactivate, and then I can only delete it. And as soon as I delete the final version, which is this button right here, it will not show up here, it is showing up here. This will delete the flow altogether. All right, so that's how you delete a screen flow or a record trigger flow or any flow of that sort. All right, so we talked about flow access and versions. We talked about deleting and deactivating flows, right? And then we talked about version limit. We did not really talk about version limitations, but the limitation is basically that you cannot, delete an activated version. That's not a limitation, that's kind of a feature, but that's a restriction that is applied, right? And there's one more thing I would like to talk about. For example, you have created a field, right? And you're referencing that field somewhere. So let's take this example. Let's open this particular screen flow, right? What am I doing here? I'm doing something like record customer tier equals platinum, right? So customer tier is the field that I'm using, right? So let's go to object manager. Let's go to the account object and let's look at the customer tier field. Now, for example, I have the customer tier field here, right? And I don't want this field anymore. Okay, can I delete this particular field? Let's go back to account fields and let's take a look at the customer tier field here and click on the delete button. So when I click on the delete button and I say yes, I want to delete this field, this does not let me delete it. Why? Because it has been referenced somewhere in salesforce.com and it tells me where has it been referenced. And if you have been attentive, you will be able to figure out which flow version is this, right? This is the same flow that we have currently opened, right? And it is being referenced there, meaning if you want to clear any kind of fields, if you want to archive or remove any metadata from your system and flow is using it, right, Salesforce will not let you clean it up. You have to clean it up from all the other places, meaning you should ensure that your flow does not use this field anymore. Save the flow with the updated version and then go ahead and try deleting it. Only then I'll let you delete it. That's what Salesforce says. Okay. One more thing, let's click on the save as button. You see here the show advanced button. What does this contain? This contains things like, what is the type of flow? This is pretty much disabled because you have already chosen what kind of flow you have built. Then you have how to run the flow, right? This is similar to how you have on Apex, right? With sharing, without sharing context, right? So if you want to enforce sharing rules, if you don't want to enforce sharing rules, you can choose this option here. Okay, and if you want to run it just by plain the current logged in user or the system context, you can choose this particular option. Okay, what happens if you say without sharing? It will be able to access all data and it will be able to get records, update records without any issues. But if you say that they should run with sharing, it will enforce the sharing rules applied. So let's say you don't have access to 3 records out of 10, so only 7 records will be impacted and will be fetched or maybe updated as part of your flow. Okay, so this is similar to sharing rules. Now let's say you want to create this flow and you want it to be more like a stub flow for to use for other flows also. So you can also create it as a template. right? When you create it as a template, you basically have the liberty whenever you come back next time, instead of choosing a screen flow, right? What do I mean by template? If I go to this classic button here and I try to, let's say, create a new flow, right? I have this option to choose from screen flow, record triggered flow, schedule triggered flow, and all of this option, right? I have some all plus templates available here. So the template that I have chosen will also start showing up here because I have created my flow as a template. That is what it means. Okay, so I can use this as the basis to create my new flows. All right, API version. API version is nothing but Salesforce's way of tracking what kind of features and functionalities are available on the flow as part of the platform offering. So it will always be in the latest version, right? So if you see currently we are on version 59, and with Spring 24 release, we'll be very soon seeing version 60. So that has come in some sandboxes. You will start seeing that in some of your sandboxes, that the API version of your metadata is 60 after 59. Okay, and it's always good to be on the latest version so that you have the features and functionality from the latest versions, and you are not using anything that's deprecated. Okay, and how do you want to name your flow? You see, use case one, screen flow, and then you have the current date time. That is what you see, right? If you want to change it, you can simply change it. So that would be the interview label. What is the interview label? The label that we saw here in the paused flow interviews, right? Failed flow interviews. This is the interview label. If I go to the list of flows and I take a look at the paused or the failed flow interviews, so you'll see that the label has the name of the flow followed by the date and timestamp. From where does this date and timestamp come from? Because it is configured on the flow level. See this one right here. It says that the flow dot current date time. It stores this information here. Okay, and then you have some generic information like what is the status of the flow? It's currently active. What kind of flow it is? Same with this type field. And then you have the version number. This is the third version of the flow. Okay. So that's all I wanted to talk about the flow access, flow versions. How can you delete and deactivate flows? I believe this was a question from someone on as a comment as to how can I delete or deactivate flows. I hope this answers your question, right? And then limitations, restrictions, and considerations of when you're using flows. All right. So that's all from this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.